beautiful.
Hi, my name is Miss Mullins. I am from Columbus, Ohio. I am a motivational speaker for my foundation, Yellow Sky Foundation, and I am also a burn survivor. Sports have always been a part of my life for as long as I can remember. I became a standout athlete in high school. I held records, I won championships, the whole kit and caboodle. I played 3 sports, volleyball, track, and basketball. Track was my primary. I was good. I was good, but I was also very lonely in school. And even though everyone knew me, I still always felt really lonely in school. I was put on this pedestal that I never really asked to be on because of my athletic ability, because I was a really good student and everything else like that. So I always felt really lonely. I always hear nowadays, guys were being like, oh, I was afraid to talk to you. That type of thing. You should have talked to me, that type of thing. So there was that. So going into, I had one real relationship, in high school, if you want to call it that, but it was a devastating breakup. And as my coach and mentor told me, that I probably sent more than a few guys to therapy after. So someone had to pay for that breakup. So, but after high school, I went away to college. I wasn't prepared emotionally. I was physically attacked right after high school. So mentally and emotionally, I really wasn't prepared, even though I was like, I got to get away and get away to school. And so I got down there. I didn't do well. I tried to focus on other things by playing volleyball, by hanging out with my friends and everything else like that. But mentally, I couldn't stay focused on my studies. I was also having some health issues where I was in and out of the emergency room that a lot of people didn't realize, because I tried to keep it secret because I didn't want to come back home. Home was the last place I wanted to come back to. But eventually I did. My father convinced me to go to his alma mater to try out that. It was closer to home. And I did, played volleyball again. That was my only demand. That is, if you expect me to go there, I'm playing volleyball on there. So I did. And when I came home from Christmas break, that's when the doctor told me I had been pregnant the entire season.
We'll be right back.
Join us every Saturday evening at 8 p.m. for a brand new episode of Tailor Made for You.
My name is Miss, and this is my story. I always tell people that my greatest accomplishment has been my 4 children. I have twins. They are 31 now, and they are 2 just beautiful human beings. I kind of had to grow up with them. So I had to kind of grow up with them. So they've kind of been with me through everything. And then my younger 2, I have another son. I have 2 boys, 2 girls. The twins are boy and girl. And then my middle son, he is 23. And my youngest, she will be 22 in a couple of weeks. So they are now all adults. And so I'm trying to get that little taste of empty nest, but they have been and always have been my motivation from the point that I was told that I was going to be a mom. So I had to alter some things. I was collegiate athlete. I had actually played a full season of volleyball before I even found out I was going to be a mom. And so just had to alter, but I always told, the way I see it was, they became the focus. They became, it was my dreams had to just be put on hold to make sure that they were able to fulfill their dreams. And so I think I've done a pretty good job of that. I've been really, truly blessed with 4 pretty terrific kids. So I always joke with my kids, the twins, and tell them, one, you've been already been in just about every gym in the Midwest, but you were destined to be athletes. And but I knew that they were going to be great just because, like I said, I had played a full season of volleyball before I found out that I was pregnant with them, and knew at that time you could even pay me to babysit a kid. So it was a big thing for me to become a mom. It was a lot for me. Then there was a lot of pressure about me settling down. I have 2 babies I need to be concerned about. And I met my ex-husband while I was at a homecoming. Him and I got to chatting. It was raining at the game, so we were in the dorm, my brother's dorm room, and me and him met there in the dorm and got to chatting, and just became a thing. And he was cool with the ready-made family and everything else like that. And my family seemed to love him. He cooked, he cleaned, he, took very good care of the kids. Ironing has always been a cuss word for me. And so it's like, made sure the kids always looked really good. And from the outside in, it was perfect, from what everybody could see. He, once again, put me on this pedestal that I didn't necessarily asked to be on. Things would take a little turn when, coaching is, for the most part, a male-dominated field. So I was always around a lot of guys. And that's where my ex's insecurities started to show. And at first it was flattering, I guess you could say. But after a while, it just became very tiring. It was just us and the twins for a little while, and then my youngest son is 8 years younger than the twins. The twins were 2 when I met him, so we were together about 6 years before he came along. But things were good. We had decided that we were going to get married, and that was essentially because everyone said that's what we were supposed to do. And that was what's in my head anyway, that this is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to get married. And we planned on it. It happened. Well, we planned on it, and then we had a scuffle. His insecurities also, I guess, gave him self-permission to go and talk to any female that would talk to him around Columbus. And this woman calls my house and asked for him, and just very nonchalantly, like I just did not just answer this phone. And come to find out, I had just given birth to my youngest son, and she had met my youngest son. He had him with him when they were together at the mall one time, and I had just went after him and missed the step, because he rushed out the front door and whatever, and after I confronted him, and I chased after him and missed the step, crushed my leg. And I always say I do things big. This wasn't okay, you're going to be in a cast for a few weeks. This was, I needed 3 surgeries and 3 plates and 9 screws to repair my leg. My son was 5 weeks old when this happened. And so I needed him to stick around, even though everything in my head was like, just get rid of him. And before I could do that, I found out I was pregnant again with my baby girl. And that was a blow. But then I started hearing, well, we both started hearing everything from both sides of our family. You got 2 kids, you got 4 kids, miss. You need to get married. You need to do this, you need to do that. And I just really just did that, took a real big breath, and me and him had a conversation. It was like, all right, we talked about this before, so either I'm going to be a single mother of 4 or a married mother of 4. There's no more shacking up or anything else like that that's going to go on. And so we got married. And then not even a year, it might have been a year after we got married, another woman is calling my house. We're in a whole different house now, the house that I bought. And well, I'm sorry, she called his cell phone. And he come busting out the house trying to get to the cell phone before I did. Well, I have a photographic memory, so I'd already memorized the number and went to call the house phone. And sure enough, she told me she had been hanging with my husband for the past 8 months. And once again, that's why I got the dialing back right after I gave birth to our daughter. Now he was out in those streets hanging out with somebody else. And at that point, I was like, yeah, I'm done. So for the next couple of years, I tried to start focusing just on me. He did ask me to go to marriage counseling. I lasted 3 sessions. And so I finally looked at the therapist and was like, what if I just don't want to be married to him no more? And I used some very other colorful words to describe him in that moment and kind of shocked the little German therapist, but that's how I felt. And I just, it's like, I don't want to do this no more. And I started focusing on me. And I put him out. A couple days later, he calls me. You really not going to try to work this out? Do you have a death wish? What? No, we're not working this out. Well, if we're not going to work this out, I'm just going to go back to Chicago. Like, you know what? I was at work. Let me call you back. 30 minutes later, I called him back. There's a ticket waiting for you. Please have your stuff out my house before I get home, because if you do not have your stuff out my house, you're going to leave one of 2 ways.
Tailor-made for you.
Tailor-made for you. We talk about love,
life,
and all things in between.
only on
Tailor-made.
And so he was gone. And for a couple of months, he kept on complaining about how he couldn't find no work up there. I found out later on that was a complete lie. But he convinced himself to come back, me to allow him to come back. And then that he stayed at my dad's. And in the meantime, he did something real crazy at my dad's. Well, I'm convinced it was him, that he did this to himself. All of a sudden, he complained someone tried to do a home invasion at my dad's and poured kerosene all over him. And I felt it was my responsibility not to have my dad deal with this level of crazy. So I let him stay for a couple more days. And I'm like, you need to go back to Chicago because this ain't gonna work. And he did. And then it was time, so it was a long time that I'm like, please do not come back here because I really need to get out of this dark place. At this point, I had to give up that house. I had to give up the house that I had worked so hard to get because I couldn't really handle it on my own anymore. There was repairs that needed to be done, and I was going to be inside out if I refinanced and all this other stuff. So my mother convinced for me and the kids to come live with her. The last thing I wanted to do at this point in my life. But I really didn't have a lot of choice. So he came into town and was mad because I wasn't there to pick him up, and confronted me in the basement of my mother's house and was like, try to use his size. He was a little taller than, I won't say little, he was about 6'2", 6'3", somewhere around in there, but my daddy was 6'5". Size ain't never intimidated me. So he tried to use his size to intimidate me, and I looked at him, I'm like, so this is where you want this to happen? And finally he stepped back and realized what I was, inferring, and never confronted me on that level again. But I realized months later that he started doing other stuff. Whenever he came into town, he started going through my cell phone records. He'd come and find the cell phone records and seeing what calls I was, who I was calling. And he would start making those calls, calling those numbers, because this is when your cell phone bill had every call that you made on it. And of course I had friends. I felt like I had been paroled. I was on every VIP list at every club in Columbus at that point. I was 34 years old at that point, like feeling good. And I had then realized like all that weight that I had put on was gone and then some. I was the size I was pre-pregnancy, first pregnancy, that type of thing. And it felt good to be out and to be seen and just to be happy. I feel like my kids felt like I was happy, but really it was still just a matter of me finding me somewhere in there again. And then crazy stuff started happening. I wake up one morning, he was in town, somebody had spray painted on my van. Stop effing with my man. Whose man am I supposed to be messing with? I'm trying to get rid of one, Weeks later, he was in town, got upset with me because I didn't want to sleep in the same bed with him when we had went away to an AAU tournament with my oldest son. And so he decided he's going to leave early, irrationally. Not hurting my feelings. I don't want you here. I'm doing this solely because everyone's saying you need to be around the kids, And a friend of mine called. It was a guy friend. And just that, a guy friend. Me and him met up, was talking. Me and him both had crazy weekends. I'm telling him about my crazy weekend. He telling me about his crazy weekend. Well, my ex-husband starts calling me, begging me to stay on the phone with him because he's getting sleepy on the road. I'm like, then pull over. I ain't got nothing to do with this. But he just kept calling. Finally, I turned off my phone. Finished up my conversation with my friend. This was a Sunday night. I'm like, let me get back home. I gotta get up and go to the office in the morning. And then I got to be maybe 5 minutes from the house, and it dawned on me, oh crap, I turned off my phone. Turned my phone back on. I got 8 voicemail messages, all from him. You need to get home. You need to get home. Then finally the last one, somebody done set your van on fire. But I just bought a new van that a kid had actually hit. I think I just made the first payment on this thing. But the insurance wasn't going to come out until that Monday, so it was parked in the carport. Well, that van had been set on fire. And on the garage wall and on the back door, stop effing with my man. So now my parents, my mom, my dad, and my second mom all think I got some crazy stalker chick. So I got put on lockdown. I was only allowed to go to work and come home. That's it. I wasn't allowed to talk to anybody. I wasn't allowed to do anything. That's all they wanted to do. And the only reason they allowed me to go to work is because I worked in a building where state troopers were guarded it. So they knew it would be hard for somebody to get up there into my office to me. still was like, okay. And a couple months went by, and I'm talking to another friend, and he and I are talking. He's like, I don't think this is a woman that's doing this. Women are confrontational. You don't even know what man you're supposed to be messing around with. No name has been given, no nothing. So what guy have you ticked off? You know, and I'm like, I'm not messing around with no one. There's no one that would be that upset with me, you know. And then I finally got a new van. I had to go through the whole insurance process, got a new van. I think it was 5 days after I got that new van. Also in this time, me and my mother were having issues. She thought I was protecting some guy. Like, I'm not protecting anybody, you know, whatever. So me and her were butting heads. So my father offered for me and the kids to come live with him. So we did, but no one knew this. I didn't notify my office. The only person who knew this was my girlfriend at the time that I worked with, because she would follow me home sometimes just to see if somebody was following me home, because that was the only way we thought someone found out where I was living, you know, at my mom's. And my ex-husband. Those were the only two people we told outside of family that I moved in with my dad. But now my new van is sitting in my dad's driveway, and somebody has vandalized it again. And this time, bitch is written all over it in Sharpie. Heck, you know, but a letter was written and left in the windshield. They had folded up a letter and put it in, you know, underneath the windshield wiper. And I opened up the letter, folded it up, and I handed it to my dad. And I'm like, can you take the kids to school? I gotta get to Walmart so I can go get something to clean this off of my van. I gotta get to work. So when I finally got to work, my dad was like, you know who it is, don't you? And I'm like, yeah. And I knew by the writing how he wrote, not by the handwriting. It was a typed, you know, computer type, but how he wrote. I used to rewrite his papers. He was still in college. And I told my dad, and my dad convinced me, don't let him know you know it's him. Me and your mom suspected it may be him because another letter was left at your mom's house saying, I know you moved. Okay. So the only thing I told my ex-husband was that, you know what, it's been 1.5 years since you and I have split, and it's time for me to file the divorce papers. I had already had him, that's the advantage of working around a bunch of attorneys and judges, I had already had a separation agreement drawn up and made him sign and notarize. The only thing I had to do was file that. And he begged and begged and begged and begged about giving us another chance. Nope, I'm good. I gotta get back to even liking you, you know. But never did tell him. I knew it was him that was doing all this stuff.
We'll be right back. At this point, I had found a house for me and the kids, so I felt like I could afford on my own. I was really moving forward. And he came into town one weekend, still begging for me to give him a chance. I'm not even trying to hear this. Well, the weekend that it happened, it was a very busy weekend. Between Thursday night well, by the time I woke up Friday and now it was Saturday night, I had gotten about 2.5 hours of sleep. But I got up, my girlfriend called me, we was going out even earlier. All right, come on, yeah. So out, kicked it. And my girlfriend still says, she's like, I don't think you ever danced that much as you did that night. I don't think I ever felt, I did not leave the dance floor that night. It was almost like I knew something was about to happen. But that Sunday morning, I had slept for about 3 or 4 hours where my son was waking me up. He wanted to go to a basketball tournament. Let's go to the basketball tournament. So by the time I got home that night, I'm doing laundry and I'm exhausted. But I was supposed to go back out again. My ex called me wanting to see how our son was doing with the stitches, all this other type of stuff. And he had called me earlier in the day and I knew he was at work because he called me from his work. Well, he actually had me call him on his work line because he had to walk around the store with his work phone. He couldn't walk around with his cell phone. Okay. So I knew he was in Chicago at the time, but when he called me that night, he was calling me from the cell phone. I didn't think nothing about it, but I was trying to do laundry, folding laundry. I got, trying to watch something that was on TV. Most likely it was football that I was watching on TV. And I had my oldest son bring me the last load of laundry. And obviously I just dozed off. And I woke up, kind of like jolted and woke up, and the only thing I could see was red and orange light. And I still wasn't sure what was going on. Like, am I dreaming? What's going on? And then I felt myself moving, now I'm moving and I'm bumping into stuff. And I was told later on I also screamed initially. And when my son heard me scream the first time, he thought I was just screaming at the TV. So that's why I'm thinking there was a football game on, because I yell at the TV. So, but he said the second time he heard me scream, he realized that wasn't yelling at the TV screen. And then he saw the flames reflecting off the wall, because I was in the family room, which was in the back of the house. He was in the living room at the front of the house. Said I couldn't see anything but orange and red. And next thing I know, he's pushing me out. My oldest son is pushing me out of the front door, past his sister who was on the porch. And he's rolling me around on the ground. And I'm still not sure what exactly is going on. My brother and his family were staying at my dad's. He had just got home from deployment. So it was a crowded house. I mean, not crowded, since there was a lot of people there at the house in that moment. But I remember my brother kneeling. I remember seeing my son run back into the house. And at this point, my brother is kneeling next to me, and I'm still not sure what is going on, but now I hear my daughter on the phone, where I just hear her say, "My mom is on fire." So now I'm really not sure what's going on. And I remember feeling my hair, and my hair was gone. And my brother is crying as he's next to me. But at this point, I really, why is this happening? What is happening? That type of thing. And they must have told them to put a wet sheet on me. I remember neighbors coming at this point, because now I'm laying face down in the front yard. But my vision is going in and out. So I'm just seeing little bits. I remember seeing a neighbor come over and him helping them put this sheet. But when they put that sheet on me, I screamed for them to take it off of me because it was extremely painful.
I remember, I don't know if it was the paramedics or the fire department, whoever was, someone in uniform running into the house, and my brother screaming, "Get out here and help my sister." And at that point, I'm telling my brother, I can't see. I can't see anymore. I remember seeing the uniform people come back out on the porch, but everything went black after that. And I woke up 27 days later. I remember waking up from the coma, and I really couldn't see. My family told me they were worried that I had lost my vision, because that was the last thing I had told my brother, that I couldn't see. I was burned 33% of my body. My face, my chest, my arms, my hands, my back. I had on a tank top and some jeans. So essentially the skin that was exposed is what was burned. And I was later told that I had flatlined 3 times. When the detectives came and talked to me, they said the day after they pulled me completely out of the coma. And I remember my mom, both my moms, my dad, my doctor, and the head nurse, and because it was the head of the burn unit who decided that he was going to be my doctor in that moment. No one expected me to survive. But when the detectives came and asked me what I remembered, and I did remember something, that's when I repeated. I'm like, well, there was this lamp, and I had all these clothes, so maybe the lamp set the clothes on fire and whatever. And then they were like, no, that's not what happened. And they told me what had happened. You were set on fire. My dad was initially the only person who said he did it. He tried to make it out that he was driving from Chicago. He called my daughter, talking about he was not, right after it happened, that he was trying to get in touch with me and I wasn't answering my phone. So he was wondering where I was, and she's screaming into the phone, telling him, what had happened. And so he acts as if he's driving from Chicago. And they said he got to the hospital like 6 o'clock the next morning, and they said my dad went after him. Because my dad was like, I know you had something to do with this. I know you had something to do with this. But there was no proof. No one saw him do it. And until they got phone records, I had given him a cell phone from the family plan, so the kids could call him locally from any time, even with him being in Chicago. Well, when they got those records, my sister, who felt helpless because she was living in Georgia, was calling him to make sure he made it safely in town. So she kept calling him. And those records were there, and they were bouncing off of towers all around 270. And they said he had driven around 270 like 10 times, and then drove all the way out to like almost past Dayton, and then back in. But it was days before they got those back. He actually sat by my bedside. I was told, even though my family tried to keep him from being alone with me, time had got mixed up, or schedules had got mixed up or whatever. And a nurse overheard him say, "Why'd you make me do this to you?" Once they told me he did it, I didn't think that much about it. It was real. I was like, oh, I didn't think he had the balls to do something like that. Okay, so what do I need to do to get up out the hospital? I got stuff to do. And they're all looking at me like I'm crazy. Like, she have any idea what she just went through? To be very candid, I was in the burn unit for about 5 weeks, and then they moved me over to Dodd Hall, which was rehab. Now I had to learn how to hold things. My left hand was very damaged. But I remember my second mom was there at the rehabilitation with me, and they were giving me a shower, because now at this point they were trying to prepare me for home. So they're showing my moms how to shower me, what needed to be done. And so she's in the shower, and I got to fooling around with my ear. And I got to fooling with something, and I handed the nurse whatever it was. I was like, here, this. And it was probably a year that went past that my second mom, she was like, you handed her a piece of your ear. It had finally was damaged to the point where it just fell off. And I was just clueless. Like I said, still really oblivious to just what my injuries were. But I was determined to go home. I got these kids to worry about. I got my other kids to worry about, you know.
Tailor-made for you.
Tailor-made for you. We talk about love,
Life
and all things in between.
only on
Tailor-made.
It was a long road. I was off work for 22 months, just shy of 2 years. And I really just adopted the mindset that this was not going to beat me either. My kids needed me. Now I'm the only parent. So I had to do what I had to do. It really was, don't feel like I really had a choice in the matter. I had to do it. So that was the first thing I thought of. My kids need me. I need to be at home. Obviously, God thought I could handle this, because according to the doctors, I was not supposed to survive. Under any circumstances was I supposed to survive what I had went through. So for that, I've always had that in the back of my head, that there has to be a purpose behind this. This happened September 10th, the night of September 10th of 2006. And by the spring of 2007, I was back on the track coaching. I was determined I was going to do what I had to do. I had went into the classrooms to explain to the younger kids that, you know, the scars. And that was the biggest fight I had. I struggled with how I perceived my looks were. Way back to high school, I remember everyone was scared to talk to me. So I didn't always think, well, maybe I'm not that attractive, you know, that type of thing. And came into my own a little bit after I had the twins, and then was really just starting to feel comfortable with myself. I got off all that weight. I was in the best shape I could be in. I was doing it. And then this. And so now I had to get used to a whole new version of me, to look in the mirror. My Dr. Miller told me that I would be the last person to see past my scars. And there was never a truer statement. I do not see what other people see. There are times I forget all about them. I could be talking, laughing, everything else like that, and then somebody might walk past and look at me weird, and oh yeah, okay. You know, that type of thing. Or I'm like, I sound the same. I feel the same. I still think the same things are funny or not funny or whatever. I still feel like me, but I don't look like me. One of the biggest things that bothers me to this day, and I guess when I really get into my feelings about what happened, is if I see somebody that I have known all my life or since childhood, and they don't recognize me. That is when I really feel a certain way about my scars. That other times I was like, I was a diva before this happened. I'm still a diva. So there's those times too.
If you or know of anyone that is dealing with domestic violence, there is help for you. Please dial 1-800-799-7233.